Hey everybody, it is Kellen Nitro for Nitro Maniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited, bringing you my take, Nitro's take, on WWE Backlash 2020, which just wrapped up on pay-per-view and the WWE Network. The event date was June 14th, almost said January, it's not January, it's June 14th, 2020, from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. Now, this event originally was scheduled to take place on June 14th, 2020 at Kansas City, Missouri, but due to the coronavirus pandemic and WWE kind of shifting all their events to a closed set in Florida, as has been the case since basically third week of March of this year. They recorded the show live, with the exception of the main event, which was recorded on June 7th, which was last weekend. But, was it hyperbole that we would see the greatest wrestling match ever between Edge and Randy Orton in the main event? Or was it more hype that didn't deliver? Well, here's my opinion on the show. So didn't get a chance to watch the pre-show, so I started with the main pay-per-view just due to different things happening on the weekend and doing stuff. But the pre-show match was Andrade taking on Apollo Crews for the U.S. title. We'll touch on that quickly. Apollo Crews retained the U.S. title in 7 minutes and 25 seconds, and we saw highlights of the match later on in the card on Backlash anyway, like they always do. They always rehash what happened in the pre-show. So by all accounts, hey, thumbs up. Everybody liked it. So this was an interesting little tidbit going into the show here. Is remember last weekend there was the NXT In Your House takeover that took place at Full Sail that had kind of the inclusion for the first time of a long time of a live studio audience in the NXT trainees. So probably about 15 to 20 different NXT or WWE Performance Center recruits in the crowd, kind of reacting and wearing merch and just kind of being a studio audience here. So Fightful Select had originally reported that most of the matches were filmed in advance on June 7th, hours before the Performance Center recruits were moved to Full Sail University to act as spectators for NXT TakeOver In Your House that aired live later that night. However, it was revealed by Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, the rest of the Wrestling Observer people, the day after, that only the Edge and Randy Orton match was pre-recorded, so the main event pre-recorded. The recruits had a call sheet at 8:30 a.m. that had them working both events until midnight on June 8th. The rest of the Backlash card will air live on June 14th. So they recorded we'll go through the runtime and that stuff, but it was the better part of an hour Edge and Randy Orton main event on June 7th with the crowd, the NXT trainees in the crowd, before they kind of whisked them away and sent them over to Full Sail for the NXT In Your House show, network special. If you want my opinions on that, go back on the channel. I did those last weekend. So we see an epic intro with all the marquee matches ever in WWE, well, clips of them, and the line repeated by both individuals in the main event: "If I can prove that I can do this, it'll be through you." And that's Goosebumps, and goes right into Michael Cole welcoming us to the PC, and our opener live from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida, is for the Women's Tag Team Championship. This is a triple threat match for the Women's Championship, where you have the tag team of, the Starbucks Express, Bliss Cross Applesauce, whatever you want to call them, Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross taking on the Iconics, so Peyton Royce and Billie Kay. And, of course, the champions, Bayley and Sasha Banks, which are now dubbed the Golden Role Models, not to be confused with what's going on AEW, with Britt Baker being the ROLL model, because she's in a wheelchair right now, just kind of, reconvalescing from a knee injury. Not to be confused with her, but these are the golden role models of Bayley and Sasha Banks. So, SmackDown storylines aplenty here. Kay walks out with her magnificent gear once again, which was pretty cool. The winner of this match, by the way, on Wednesday night will be on NXT. They get a shot at Shotzi Blackheart and Tegan Nox. Will take on the winner in this contest on Wednesday night in one of the heavily advertised matches to go head-to-head with whatever AEW's got cooking for this next week or so. Bayley walks out, and it's very WCW era Randy Savage inspired gear, about the later run Randy Savage stuff. So that we're talking 99, the Gorgeous George era Randy Savage gear, kind of an homage to that. The kind of with the black leather and the fishnets and everything. So kind of a cool look for her for sure. Two standoff spots early on in this match. It didn't really move the needle for me a little bit, and I don't get the hate that Billie Kay has been getting online lately. Like, this has been just kind of a new thing since everybody kind of, agrees that Nia Jax's skills in the ring are kind of dangerous. For whatever reason, they had Billie Kay kind of pointed out as well and said that she's not one of the best workers on the roster either. And again, I don't get that. I think Jax is by far more dangerous than Billie Kay is. And I think that the fact that Billie Kay's in a tag team kind of hides a little bit of her shortcomings. Peyton Royce as well has some shortcomings as well. But the fact that they're a tag team, they work well together. So it doesn't really bode too well to split them up at this point, and I don't think they will. I think they'll keep them as a unit going forward here. However, Royce hits a super sloppy crossbody to the outside, with everybody kind of waiting on the outside and on the ring apron to kind of catch her and kind of fall back as well. I think it was Cross and Bliss on the apron, and she kind of just bulldozed through them and kind of fell, but kind of awkwardly and delayed. It looked kind of disjointed, so it was kind of However, this match did have a cool finish with Alexa Bliss hitting her Twisted Bliss finisher on Royce off of the top rope, but Sasha Banks rolling up Bliss shortly thereafter for a small package and a 1-2-3 count to retain the women's tag team titles. So Bayley, the SmackDown Women's Champion, is still the WWE Women's Tag Team Champion, along with Sasha Banks at the end of this pay-per-view. So the Golden Role Models, as they are now dubbed by WWE TV, retain the WWE Women's Tag Team belts in a runtime of, what we got here? In a runtime of 8 minutes and 50 seconds. So again, passable opener, really sloppy though. The matches did get better though. We cut to the back, and Braun Strowman rose up in a 1986 Buick Grand National Black Pro Street V8 big block. Oh, yeah. I dig your style, sir. I like that. That car is the same car that was featured on SmackDown on Friday, so it's kind of Braun's car now is the center point of a lot of stories. So the car is in the parking lot, and we saw what happened on SmackDown on Friday to it. Does it get damaged tonight? We then cut to a trailer for Extreme Rules, a brand new logo this year. It looks sharp. July 19th is the date for Extreme Rules. July 19th is the date for Extreme Rules. I'm looking ahead on Wikipedia, and this event is originally scheduled to be held at the SAP Center in San Jose, California. However, with the current situation, I doubt that will be where it is. I think Extreme Rules may end up... I think Extreme Rules will end up being moved, whether it's at the Performance Center or elsewhere. I don't know. There are rumblings that they are looking at potentially, kind of changing sets a little bit. They're really flexible in Florida, and they're really headquartered in Orlando. So, to me, if they're looking for a variety, I think it's a no-brainer for them to basically set it up at Full Sail and just say, hey, we're coming to you live from the home of NXT, Full Sail University for Extreme Rules. But I think, once again, Performance Center with a little bit of mix between cinematic, theatrical, and live action wrestling happening for that show. Much like what we've been seeing. The giveaway, though, is the coloring in the logo. They've done some changes with the logo, and the colors in the logo are kind of the neon green and purple, which are Jeff Hardy's colors. So this might mean that Jeff Hardy might be in a big marquee matchup on his show. So we'll have to wait and see. And speaking of Jeff Hardy, the next match was Sheamus versus Jeff Hardy in a grudge match. One of the more grosser angles of the year. It'll be up for the year-end awards for sure. What is the most distasteful or the grossest promotional tactic, most distasteful promotional tactic, I believe the name of the award is. A lot of things WWE have done this year will be running in that category by the end of the year, as it always seems to be, but this year especially. And this angle is one of them. This has kind of been something that I necessarily haven't agreed with, and it's been kind of cringeworthy at times. But hey, we get a Jeff Hardy versus Sheamus match out of this. So more of a street fight pace to open with Sheamus in control with a brutal atomic drop. Later on in the match, a brutal atomic drop for Hardy on top of the ring post by Sheamus. Just a pure power heel move. And it sounds like then he's starting to work on the surgically repaired knee of Jeff Hardy that kept Jeff out of action for the majority of 2019. 2 Irish Curse backbreakers for only a 2 count, and then Sheamus then taking issue with Michael Cole's commentary during this match. Now, this has been ongoing for about a month now. There's been 2 heel wrestlers, both on SmackDown, that have really kind of dug in on Michael Cole on his commentary. That I've found out, at least, that they're kind of working through maybe a little bit of a sub storyline with this. I hope it's not a full-fledged storyline. It's kind of more of, I hope it still is kind of a heel detail thing. One is Bayley, that's kind of more of a playful kind of live riff of things happening in her matches and that stuff with Cole, as she can hear his announcing and that stuff, and she gives like a "oh yeah" or "you better say that right" or whatever. Sheamus, on the other hand, looks like he's trying to stare down or build up to a match with Michael Cole, and we do not want to see Michael Cole in a wrestling match in 2020. I'm sorry, we didn't want to see him in a wrestling match in 2011, and yet we got to see that. So yeah, this I hope it's just, you know, heels being heelish and just using all of the details, newfound details that the pandemic has given them, and not a potential build up to something later on down the line where we have commentators stepping into the ring once again. We can leave that in the last decade if possible. But anyway, back to the match. This was a fairly decent match once Jeff started his comeback. A white noise by Sheamus only lands a 2 count. Hardy, though, fights back, lands the Swanton Bomb for only a 2 count. Sheamus, though, intercepts Hardy on the outside with a brogue kick, and a second one inside the ring lands the 1-2-3 for the finish. A great explosive finish on the outside. It went Hardy was trying to do his little catwalk thing, which is kind of inhibited now with a plexiglass on the barrier. He doesn't get that much beam left, but he still was able to pull it off tonight. And in midair, Sheamus nailed him with the brogue kick, and then once again in the ring nailed him with another brogue kick. So 2 brogue kicks for the 1-2-3. And yeah, the passable, really good. Like, almost this should have been the opener. High intensity, and I would have said the crowd got into it, but it's kind of artificially influenced a little bit. Hey, it was what it was. A fairly decent blow-off match after a really gross part of the angle, or gross angle. So hopefully no more exploiting somebody's substance abuse issues on WWE TV. I know that's a tough direction for them not to go, but man, it's just uneasy whenever you see that. Miz and Morrison interview in the back says one of them will be Universal Champ after tonight, but Otis and Mandy crash the party and says if either one of Miz or Morrison wins the Universal title, Otis will definitely cash in. So that kind of adds a level of, oh my god, is he going to cash in type unpredictability to the match tonight while he calls his shot. He says that if Miz or Morrison pin Braun Strowman in the Universal title match, then that is going to be the reality, that Otis will cash in on whoever gets the pin. So will that happen? Well, we'll look at the results a little bit later on and tell you about that. Next match, Asuka versus Nia Jax for the Raw Women's Championship. This is Asuka's first title defense since acquiring the title due to Becky Lynch's pregnancy, and this is basically the first real marquee match. They've built up this angle with her and Nia Jax throughout the month, and Jax is we've talked about it on here, and you've heard other places talk about how dangerous of a worker Jax is, especially working with Kairi Sane. So kind of adds a little bit of intrigue to this match here. And every time, well, let's get into the match here and take a look at it. Every time that Asuka would gain advantage, Jax would quell it fairly quickly. Nia Jax has learned a jackhammer type maneuver. Joel calls it a Jax hammer. I lulled. Only 2. And the matchup itself kind of had a real lame ending to it, where it was a double count out on the outside where Asuka retains. The runtime for that one was only 8 minutes and 25 seconds. So that ended in a double count out. We're due a rematch with this, I guess. I would have liked to see a definitive result either way, but the Raw Women's Championship will probably be main eventing on Raw tomorrow night with a rematch somehow, and maybe we'll get more storyline going forward in that route. The next match was for the Universal title. This was the handicap match for the Universal title, where Miz and Morrison, John Morrison and The Miz take on the Universal Champion Braun Strowman, and it was deemed that whoever got the pinfall or submission victory in this match would be the new Universal Champion. They did this stipulation a few times during the Attitude Era as well, a lot of them with Austin versus the McMahons, and maybe Austin versus Triple H and Vince McMahon or something, or Shane McMahon in the 99 and 2000s era. Basically, it's a handicap match, but with higher stakes. So it's kind of got that still old school Attitude Era feel to it. I really dig the music video that Miz and Morrison did before the match, but it's the second time in 3 days that it got cut off, though, although tonight we got to see about 2 minutes of it. So a little bit more each time. Maybe by Friday we'll be able to watch the entire thing. And this was actually a really entertaining handicap match. Morrison with some amazing aerial works. Strowman, though, too strong. And for the finish, a running power slam and a 1-2-3, and Braun Strowman retains the Universal title. The runtime in that one was 7 minutes and 20 seconds, and one of the best matches to make Strowman look absolutely strongman. Braun Strowman. He looked dominant in this. There was a couple of times where Miz and Morrison got the upper hand, but they maybe only had the upper hand for maybe a minute, if that, 30 seconds at the most, and Strowman would come back. So building him up to be an unstoppable beast. Maybe we see then Lesnar come back to take on Strowman for SummerSlam now at this point, in a Haas match, and hopefully we get fans back into buildings where they can run smaller buildings with fans, because that would be the type of match you'd want to have in front of a live audience. AJ Styles is interviewed in the back by Caleb Braxton, and he says that there will be an epic championship presentation for his IC title on Friday. A couple things out of that. He invites Daniel Bryan to the celebration, so obviously there might be more to talk about with the Intercontinental title scene off of that. And then when we throw back to the announcer's desk, Samoa Joe makes a couple of snide comments about AJ's family once again. So, this is just playing off of a few things, and he kind of gave that kind of smirk and then a kind of a scowl look to the camera. So the fine details, it's the details, folks, that make me lull in these things. The WWE title was on the line next, where we had the challenger Bobby Lashley with MVP in his corner taking on the champion Drew McIntyre. Before the match, Lashley locks in the full Nelson, and the champ is down. Unfortunately, though, the bell didn't ring, so it's one of those deals that when the bell rings, are we going to get a squash out of this? And for the first time in a long time, I looked at this and I was like, oh my goodness, this could potentially happen. This could be, Drew's title reign could be fairly short here, but sure enough, there is a match off of this, and the match starts and Lashley's in control. Again, the most vulnerable that McIntyre has looked as champ so far, and McIntyre, though, fights back, locks in a Kimura, which is one of Brock Lesnar's specialties for a submission hold. Lashley reaches the rope. A Claymore attempt reversed into a spear by Lashley, only a 2 count, and now for the finish, Lana hits ringside and distracts the ref. Drew hits the Glasgow kiss on Lashley, and Lashley collides into Lana and MVP, and everybody collapses on the outside. There's a Claymore on Lashley, a 1-2-3, and McIntyre retains in a runtime of 13 minutes and 15 seconds in the semi-main spot. Post-match, Lashley leaves Lana laying there and kind of just, walks off. You know what? This, again, was the most vulnerable that Drew has looked. And it was refreshing to see Lashley in a power heel role. And he pulls that off. Awesome. I wouldn't mind seeing this matchup again. Maybe we get finally I guess a pivot from Lana and Lashley being together to MVP and Lashley being together, as MVP comes back as this managerial type and is training these athletes. And just with the one goal in mind, to take the belt off of Drew. I think that would be amazing, because you kind of seen it with Zelina Vega a little bit, but the athletes that Zelina was bringing in were they were smaller athletes, and smaller and quicker athletes for the WWE title. They work with a certain crowd, but I think that with the summertime hitting and that stuff, and going into the roads of SummerSlam, and the way that SummerSlam is kind of the road to SummerSlam is built, I should say, it's classic old school. You want to have heavyweight versus heavyweight for that. So I think if MVP is kind of the new player coach, heel manager type here, and bringing in athletes like Lashley, and maybe there might be a couple others that he brings in to challenge McIntyre going on down the road. I think that's a perfect road to SummerSlam, especially if everything's going to be kind of a little subdued due to the situation this year. I think that's a perfectly safe route to go with it and still get the results that you want. So backstage, the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders are fighting, and Eric is beeled into Strowman's car. So again, we see the car, and the car gets beat up. So that's kind of the ongoing joke now over the last few weeks, is that Strowman shows up in a nice car and it gets beat up or flipped or something. Miz and Morrison trash it the other week, and then this past Friday it gets broken again in a fight with Strowman and Miz and Morrison, I think. And then this tonight, it's the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders, and then that triggers off a cinematic. Didn't really get that. I think that was just a filler to kind of pad out time. I laughed at the Japanese bike gang, Akira Tozawa, though. It was pretty hilarious, and I don't know what I watched. Just kind of one of those things. The whole Street Profits, Viking Raiders, can you top this, or anything you can do, I can do better thing. Didn't really click the check mark box for me, but if a younger generation enjoyed that, then good for them. That's something for them to watch. I could really care less either way with this. This was something that I didn't get, so you can tell that I didn't get it by the amount of times I said I didn't get it. So we didn't see highlights of the U.S. title match between Andrade and Cruz. Again, Cruz retained. And then we go right into the main event. And this one, I was fearing, or kind of hoping too, that it was a cinematic. And then we kind of got one of these hybrid cinematics, in which I don't even think really we can call it a hybrid cinematic. They had, there was some stage spots in there where they could get the camera in different angles. In fact, Tom Phillips with a disclaimer before the match saying that they were going to use a variety of production techniques to enhance your experience. And that basically meant that we were going to put the camera in the ring in different spots. The GoPros were up on the ring posts again, which, again, I told you, I think with the Double or Nothing review, how much I love that. And I really do. I really love having those cameras up on the GoPros up on a ring post. I think that's something that more promotions should utilize. And they piped in sound effects from the crowd. And you know what? A lot of people may think that's cheesy and hokey. I liked it. I thought that it was subtle enough that it didn't take away from the match at all. But it kind of added a little bit of ambience to it. I know of a couple that was watching WrestleMania, and they just decided to pipe in a YouTube 6-hour track of crowd sounds looping that you can find online, because you can find anything online, basically. And it was fairly, I would say, their experience was greatly enhanced by it. So, it's something that I think they tried out during this match. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear and see it more often on Raw and SmackDown, because the way they brought it in, I thought was fairly subtle. I might be in a minority here, but I thought it was fairly subtle. I love the Howard Finkel tribute with the intro, and had Howard Finkel doing the ring announcements. R.I.P. to the Fink. What a great gentleman. What a great man. Had a chance to meet him at WrestleMania many years ago in New Orleans. A real nice guy. So the match starts. There are 2 arm drags by Edge to start, but on the 3rd arm drag attempt, Randy attempts a RKO out of nowhere, so stalemate off of that. Only 5 minutes in and already better than the Mania match. Yes, it looks like these guys absolutely brought it for this one. The 2 tease the superplex to the outside, but Edge headbutt stops that and allows Edge to hit a diving clothesline off of the apron, and the headbutt is what busts Randy Orton open, so we get some color from Orton. A crossface attempt by Edge, no dice as Orton hits the rope. Orton turns the tide, though, with a neck breaker, and then Orton whispers something to Edge's ear on the outside, and it sounds like he drops an F-bomb. I have to go back and rewatch that. I couldn't hear it, couldn't make out what he was saying, because that's when the mix kind of went a little wonky with the audio and that stuff, and the crowd sound was still kind of piping up over top of it. But it sounds like he dropped an F-bomb. I don't know. I just had to check and see. Orton hits the Garvin Stomp after rolling Edge back in. Vintage Orton there. And then the 2 trade free Amigos attempts. R.I.P. Eddie. A huge superplex by Orton for only a 2 count. An execution DDT attempt by Edge after a draping DDT attempt by Orton. And then at this point, I'm into this. And then this is when it got kind of a little comical, but awesome at the same time. We saw an Olympic slam by Orton, nodding to Kurt Angle. And then Orton finally hits his draping DDT. Only 2 count off of both. An Edge-o-matic out of the RKO attempt. Only 2 for Edge. An Unprettier by Edge, so a nod to Christian. Only 2. Orton hits the pedigree for 2. A nod to Triple H. And then a rock bottom for Edge. Only 2 on Orton. And then an RKO out of nowhere to end that sequence up. And only 2, but it wasn't fast. It was just, slow, methodic. Probably this entire sequence maybe took about 6 or 7 minutes. And it ends off with 2 spears by Edge and only lands a 2 count. So, that built momentum like crazy throughout that. That actually might have been about 10 or 11 minutes, that entire sequence, but I really loved that. I thought that put that match right here. I'm going to sound crazy by saying this, but I think it's one of the this has got to be a dark horse match of the year, just due to the build of it, and this flowed so much nicer than the WrestleMania match, and it just was, put 2 wrestlers in the ring and let them wrestle, It was, I don't want to say the greatest wrestling match ever. That's hyperbole, but it is one of the best matches WWE has put out there this year. An RKO off of a flying crossbody from Edge out of the corner only lands a 2, but here comes the finish. A low blow by Orton out of the brand new anti-Venom submission, kind of the Hanar choke that Edge has been using in his match earlier on with Randy Orton, and I think he pulled it out during the Rumble match as well when he was down to the Final 4. And we see the infamous head punt by Randy Orton for the 1-2-3, and Randy Orton wins. And the runtime of this card wraps up at 3 hours and 5 minutes, and post-match, EMTs hit the ring to help Edge up, and the story is, did Randy Orton, the legend killer, end the comeback hopes of Edge? We'll wait and see. But anyway, reports out of this one is that Edge suffered a couple of torn triceps out of this. So hopefully that's might be a little bit more exaggerated than true. And we'll see what happens. Again, this thing was taped on June 7th. And this thing aired on June 14th. So I'm imagine over the next few days we'll get I guess I don't want to say a full injury report off of this, but places like Wrestling Observer and NoDQ.com, and then all the Wade Keller site and a whole bunch of stuff. We'll have the exact details on what happened there with that. So, anyways, now it's time for the rating. I will give. Well, first of all, we'll go to Twitter first before I give my out of 10. And on notifications here, 16 of you voted, and as expected, 68% of the vote says that Edge and Orton was the match of the night, as if I needed to ask, but it was the match of the night. It was a takeover style match on a WWE pay-per-view, and it was better than WrestleMania, so there we go. Kind of old school too, where the Backlash match is actually better than the WrestleMania match. That kind of goes back to 2004, 2005 WWE, so cool. I'll give the entire show a 7 out of 10. I think that the Street Profits Viking Raiders thing made no sense, so we can ball that up and toss it. That gets a dud. And again, Edge and Orton was really good. The only knock against that one, again, is 44 minutes. 34 would have been better. I really liked how Lashley and McIntyre worked together, and I really liked how Lashley made McIntyre look vulnerable for the first time as champion. And you know, the women's tag and the opener was really sloppy, I found, but the Nia Jax Asuka match was actually, you know, somewhat decent. I didn't see Nia being overly dangerous with Asuka at all in there. I think it's just a bad mix to have Kairi Sane and Nia Jax in there. So if we can avoid that, that's fine. I'm glad that the Sheamus Jeff Hardy thing, kind of this portion of the storyline is done, or this storyline is done, one of the two, just because it was gross. And the Strowman, Miz, and Morrison thing was enjoyable and awesome. I loved it. It was great. But again, that main event, that clicked all the boxes for me. I really liked it. I love the pageantry, and I love the pageantry and the over the topness of it. And I love the fact that they kind of went with the intro a little bit cinematic, but they taped it as live and got some different looks out of it. So very cool. And yeah, you know, with the after effects, with the audio and that stuff, keep doing that. That's pretty cool. All right, folks, later days. Happy wrestling watching. We'll catch you next time on Nitromaniac TV's Wrestling Unlimited. I'm Kellen Nitro. We'll see you on the flip side. So stay safe out there, folks.